Hi, everybody. I'm Jen Johnson, and you are watching Thought by Thought Healing, where I talk about everything related to chronic pain and chronic symptoms because current neuroscience really is showing that the nervous system and the brain really have a huge role in controlling those symptoms. So when we look at the thoughts and beliefs and emotions that we are experiencing, they will be having a physiological response, which includes pain. I'm a chronic pain coach, and I have this channel so that I can get as much hope out there for those of you who are struggling with chronic symptoms. So I have people on this show that have healed. I have professionals, neuroscientists, the whole gamut, so that you can hear it from many different perspectives. And today I had the honor of interviewing Dan Hindsley, who's in Northern England. So it's afternoon for him and bright and early in the morning for me. And on top of that, I woke up this morning and my furnace is broken. And so the house is freezing. Luckily, I was able to call somebody. They'll come out this afternoon. But I hope you enjoy this interview. I really love just talking about different tools that we can use and how to use those tools. So hopefully it's encouraging and you can put that in your repertoire of ways to help in the journey of reversing chronic pain and chronic symptoms. I'm a chronic pain coach. So if you want to check out my website, thoughtbythoughtealing.com, or shoot me an email, thoughtbythoughtealing@gmail.com. All right. That's it for now. Enjoy this week, and I will talk to you next Saturday. Bye. All right, let's get going. I have Dan Hindsley here with me. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so I found Dan and Matt, who was on, Matt Stevenson, who was on here 2 weeks ago. One of my clients sent me one of your articles of So several of them were written by you about you and your healing story, and then one about Matt. And as soon as I read him, I was like, I have to have both these guys on. So thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I saw your interview with Matty, which is good. He's a childhood friend of mine, so I tell you, interviewing him to write the article, it's funny. You should interview all your friends and family because I've known him for years and years and years, but you don't get into that level of detail often enough.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Plus,
so I recommend it. You should write articles up about your friends and family.
so speaking of writing, your writing is great. We were just talking about it, and it's very inspiring. So I'm definitely going to put that in the show notes. But how did you? Let's go back a little further then, and just start with your story of where it all went wrong. When you look back, what are kind of those pivotal moments?
Okay. So it started for me in my early 20s when I think I actually started in a football match or soccer match, as you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
I got a pain in my right butt cheek.
Yeah.
And then it should have gone. It didn't. It kept coming back. And then the pain spread to my back, and that sent off a whole journey that lasted probably about 15 years, where at one point, relatively quickly, I was with a surgeon holding up an MRI scan showing degenerative discs and bulging discs, and quite kindly gave me a new belief that my back was damaged, and I spent the next 15 years trying to work it out. And I guess, I think the thing that set me off on that journey, as soon as you hear a message like that, you've got degenerative disc disease and you get a belief. For me, I was a very positive thinker. It was like, how do I beat this? And so it was like, how do I beat this? And you go off. But the problem is that I accepted the diagnosis and I was trying to beat the symptoms. So I had some success, but actually I spent 15 years or so just in and out of episodes of quite severe chronic pain. Sometimes just unable to walk, unable to turn over in bed. Got stuck on the toilet once, couldn't get off. just agonizing pain, sciatica, and that persisted for a long time. And lived with it. yeah, I lived with it. So yeah, it started, to answer your question, in my early 20s. That's when it all started going wrong.
Yeah, it. I think there is an assumption. I know that the term psychosomatic is not a very acceptable term, but when the world looks at psychosomatic, I think there's an assumption that the pain probably isn't that bad then. And so you talking about being stuck on the toilet and at times not able to walk, I just want to bring that up as evidence that mind body pain it can be absolutely excruciating, right? I mean, is that your experience? Because it definitely was.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's real pain. It's absolutely real physical symptom and real pain. Um, and it's just that if you're presented with a diagnosis from someone who, even someone in a white coat with all that authority, which is part of the problem, since it
Yeah.
makes you believe what they say. We're trained to believe what they say without thinking there might be another person in a white coat that has a different opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But you believe and you take it on board, and yeah, and I think that accentuates the pain, because once you've got that belief, yeah, you're stuck with the symptoms, and now you've got someone confirming that you've got some problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, the pain is absolutely real, just not caused by what they think.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you say you spent 15 years with like claiming that degenerative disc disease as a diagnosis? 15 years?
Yeah, yeah, 15 years until I found Dr. Sarno and
Okay.
other people that said that is a normal abnormality. Yeah, if I MRI scanned 100 people, I can't remember the exact stats, but a large percentage of them would have similar disc degeneration. It's just a thing. It's not the it's not the cause of your pain. Until I found someone with equal authority that told me that, and I actually could start to shift it. Yeah, I spent 15 years, which is one of the reasons why I like talking about it and writing about it, because if I
Yeah.
can shorten that length of time for somebody else, that's the goal, really.
Yes.
Yeah, someone doesn't have to be in 15 years to get the message.
Yes, you and me both. Definitely. Let's shorten that amount of losing your life during that period. So how did you find Dr. Sarno? Or I'm assuming that was your first introduction. It was not for me. I actually found Sarno quite a bit down the road of mind body healing, just really ironic. But when you first heard of Sarno, assuming it was him, um, did you immediately accept it, or how did you go about kind of
Yeah, no, I didn't. So I heard about it from my auntie, I think, and I'd previously come across. I think I'd read some like book reviews on Amazon, I think, or something like that. But I was regularly googling. So when I got my diagnosis, the surgeon said, "You've got a couple of options. You can have surgery, or you
okay.
can manage it as long as you're possible." He said, "Manage it." And my advice would be manage it as long as possible, because technology is changing all the time. We are growing discs on the back of rats and all sorts of things that we could maybe put you a new disc in, so
Yeah.
every now and again
How?
I would Google to see if I could have a disc with grown on the back of a rat, or whatever technology advancements were coming out in back surgery, uh, and that's where I came across it first. And then I think I read some comments and reviews on Amazon and ignored it, and my auntie mentioned it to me. So I eventually bought the book.
And
I
are you talking about Healing Back Pain, the book?
think it was Healing Back Pain. Yeah, he's done a few, hasn't he? But yeah,
Yeah.
I've read a couple of them. I think it was Healing Back Pain. And even then, you're ready. And this is, I think I've seen this a few times in people I've spoke to who've recovered. It's like after you've cemented that belief for 15 years that there's something physically wrong with you, you're really invested in that diagnosis. And I think reading the book, it's like, yeah, I understand this. I understand how stress and emotions might cause physical symptoms. That I can see that correlation. But my pain is real. Mine's so real and it hurts so much. Yeah. So yes, there was a little bit of doubt. And now looking back, I can see it is that identification. You know, you identified with the diagnosis, and you've spent 15 years talking about it and showing people how courageous you are, just plowing on through it and being positive. And so no, I didn't accept it straight away. I think the seed was sown, and then it took a couple of years before it managed to take hold.
Oh, so would you say, are you saying you spent another couple years before you started to do the work of healing?
I'm really bad at time trying to put it all in time scales, but yes, I think there was definitely a long period where that seed was there, but I ignored it, and then patterns started to emerge, and I could see my pain flaring up when things were happening. So changes at work, in the technology industry, and things move quite quickly. Change quite quickly. So you inevitably find yourself with management changes and direction. I would get flare-ups.
So I'm losing your audio for the last 5 seconds. Okay, can you say the last sentence again?
Yes. I would say I'm in the technology industry, and it moves quite quickly. Lots of moves and changes, management changes, technology changes. And I noticed patterns that when things were moving that would affect me, the pain would flare up. So I think the seed was sown, and then took a while for me to see this emerging and go, wait a minute, maybe there's something in this.
And I'm just curious, you don't have to answer this, but with the changes, would you say for you, what was the underlying emotion with that? Was it rage, like Dr. Sarno says, or was it fear, or like?
No, it's difficult. I think sometimes emotions are, multifaceted, and so it's difficult to put a label on it. I guess there was, I remember recalling that it was a sense of frustration that I had to prove myself again to a new set of leadership people. And it was just like a frustration, I guess, and a lack of control, I think, were the things that were coming up. Not necessarily anger. There's plenty of that came up later, but
yeah. It's funny.
I wouldn't say rage, though, no.
Okay. Well, I will just confess that this last weekend, I bought some new technology. You can't see any of it, but and it did not go well. And and yeah, it was a hot mess for sure for about 5 days. And I felt a lot of that stuff. I felt shame that I couldn't figure it out. I absolutely felt rage that I was unable to. I had to get help, for sure. And it just a lot of those emotions. So what you're talking about, that layered thing, there was probably like 5 or 6 emotions that were competing with one another and supporting each other, and in sending me into fight or flight over technology. Not my favorite thing. So, okay, so that was one pattern of change, it sounds like.
Yes.
So did that kind of contribute then to your evidence that your pain was, do you use the word mind body or neuroplastic?
Yeah, I think, mind body syndrome is the one that resonates for me the most.
Yeah.
That's what but yes, it was. Oh, sorry.
Your audio went, but it's back, so we're good.
So yeah, that's the mind body syndrome is the one that resonates with me the most. So that is what I used, and yes, those patterns sort of confirmed that for me.
Yeah.
I started to think, actually, yes, there's something in this, something that needs exploring further. So that was the start of the shift.
Okay, so so for you, everybody's journey is different, but what did that exploring include up front?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 things for me. There's the education.
Yeah.
So actually rereading with a mindset of, actually, this might be applying to me, rather than rereading it as an observer of things that apply to other people. So rereading and educating myself on the science behind mind and body, which to me is really, really simple. So I always say, you know, the thoughts generate emotions, and emotions generate physical reactions.
Yeah.
And if anyone's struggling to understand it, in my friends and family, I always say, you think you say something stupid, you feel embarrassed, and your cheeks flush red. So it's
Yeah.
like fact. Your body reacts to your thoughts and emotions.
Yeah.
And then so for me, there was like it was understanding that there was two layers of what was happening. There was a layer that was built up around what I believed around the pain itself that needed exploring. So you like you bend over once and you pick a sock up and your back flares up, or you get a spasm and sciatica. So you therefore believe you can't bend forward anymore, which I think is dealt with predominantly by somatic tracking. And then for me, there's a layer of deeper stuff, which is, you know, why I've got these the thoughts and emotions that have been repressed for years, because you didn't want to feel them, and so they were never allowed to take the natural course and get repressed and stuck in the body. So if you think of those thoughts and emotions as physical reactions, thoughts and emotions that you've not addressed for 15 years are just they're stuck in there causing havoc. So I got them. So the somatic tracking dealt with the higher level stuff, and then the deep level stuff for me, journaling was the key. And then specifically, it's probably why I've ended up writing the articles as an extension of I just started enjoying writing.
Yeah.
and creating it's an extension of an evidence diary, I guess, is the articles that I write, which are just for fun and not to promote anything other than good stories
And inspiration, right?
Yeah. Hopefully to plant that seed for somebody else.
Yeah. When you did somatic tracking, how often would you do it? What was that like?
Yeah, so I, I, I only now see it as a form of somatic tracking.
Okay.
Actually, all I was doing is reintroducing things I believed that I couldn't do. So from I had a list of really silly things like I could swim front crawl, but no, not breaststroke, for example, or I could like I could have bent forward, like I said, couldn't pick up socks, so I had to always bend down with a strict squat for to get anything off the floor, and I had all these weird and wonderful things I could and couldn't do. So I just started working my way through them and unpicking, reintroducing them, which I now see as like the somatic tracking, removing the fear through journaling and breathing with breath work and exercise, and I would like pick a sock up, and if it hurt, I would do it again, and then I would do it again, and I would do it again until it stopped, and started reintroducing everything. Ultimately ended up being in a position where I couldn't run. The last thing on my list was running, and I couldn't run more than 2 minutes without big sciatic flare up, and then I managed to work through that just to convince myself more than anything. And then I ended up doing a half Ironman triathlon, so I had a half marathon at the end of a bike and the swim, and I would manage to do all that pain free. So, and that was like just reintroducing it all from 2 minutes to 3 minutes to building this running pattern up slowly, having some setbacks, coming back to journaling and breath work. And so looking back, that it was just like that was the somatic tracking stuff for me. That was addressing things that I believed I couldn't do, and removing the fear and doing them again.
Okay.
So reprogramming.
Yeah. Okay. I think I see somatic tracking is slightly different. So I'm glad I asked that question.
Good. How do you see it?
I see somatic tracking as kind of observing and paying attention to the sensations in your body.
Yes. So I would do that whilst I was running, for example.
Okay. So
I'd be running and I'd be going, okay, I can feel that tension there, and then I'd be moving my attention to my hands, and then to areas of my body that weren't in pain, and then I'd put it back. Sometimes I would shrink the pain. I would put lines around it, give it colors and shapes, and then move my attention somewhere else, move it outside of my body, back in, whilst I was running.
Yeah. Okay. So so then we're on the same page with that. So, with that, reintroducing running, I just want to talk about this because a lot of people get hung up on, the fact that we start reintroducing these things, but it still hurts. And so there's this, well, this is not working then. So when you first started running, Was it pain-free? And
No,
just talk about how you dealt with that, if you had
no,
fear of the pain, or what'd you do?
yeah, I'd gotten myself through. So I think I'd dealt with some of the deeper level stuff that I mentioned first.
First.
Yeah, so I'd
Mhm.
reintroduced most things. My life was
Mm.
predominantly pain free. I would spot
Okay.
things changing at work, and I would get flare ups a little bit, and I could settle them without them taking hold fully.
Okay.
But then, yeah, running would just remain this thing. So I think I couldn't have done it without all that. I might be wrong, but with all that work shifting the deeper stuff out of the way through journaling, etc., I
Okay.
don't think I'd have been the mindset to have done it.
Yeah.
But having said that, still, yeah, no, I went out with 2 minutes pain, 2 minutes, and I would get tension. I would start the like trying to visualize it and all that sort of stuff that we just mentioned.
Mhm.
Then 4 minutes, and then and 5 minutes, and then I thought, I'm fine. I went and did 20 minutes, and then the next day I couldn't walk. So it's like I had to start again. I kept going back. I knew it was just the fear and the anticipation of the pain bringing the pain. So I sort of knew it, but I still couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
So it was because it's just that ingrained. So I just kept working through it. I would start back again and go, right, well, I can do 5, and then I can do 10, and I would keep an evidence diary.
Yeah.
And then, I think one day I'd had a couple of beers and it was a nice sunny day, and I ended up playing football with my nephews in the garden for ages, and I didn't get any pain. So that went in the evidence diary,
Mhm.
and so slowly, every time I would get a setback, I would look through the evidence diary of things that I could do, and I reintroduced using this technique. And it just took a while. It took a while, but the time I was
Mm.
really quite methodical with it. But the time it did click fully, when all doubt went, was I was starting a new job. Well, the same company, shifted job again. Trigger for me, so
Yeah.
pain was, and in fact quite bad. I was traveled down to London, and had a meeting with new leadership in the morning, and I got up early and I went into Hyde Park, and I was in quite a lot of pain. I got my running gear on and I went in, and then I was just set off hobbling. Like really, if you looked at my gait, I must have looked ridiculous.
Yeah. Yes.
But I just kept breathing it, doing like positive affirmations, and slowly eased up, eased up, eased up, and then like for 20 minutes later, I was just sprinting through, thinking, and that's just when it real nailed it for me, and it never really came back after that, because I
Wow.
went out in pain and used the running to get rid of the pain. It's like, well, it can't be structural.
Yeah. It's not the running. The running is not the
Yeah, it
problem.
would get worse. Yeah, it wouldn't get better if I was running with a structural problem. If you run on a broken leg, it doesn't start getting better the further you go.
Yeah.
So that
100%.
that that fixed it for me. So after that, uh, yeah, after that I was fine, and
Wow.
that's when I signed up for the triathlon. So
That's
that's when I got back into running.
Yeah. So from like barely able to walk, excruciating pain,
Yeah,
to a triathlon. That's so cool. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was just I don't think it's necessary, but for me it was. I wanted to complete it, something that was I would say a challenge, just to
Okay.
throw a
Mhm.
line under it in my own head,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it worked. It went in my evidence diary, and then I got to write it up as a story, and it was a bit more interesting because there was something that involved running at the end of it, and yeah, so it was good.
Yeah. That's awesome. Um, so on one of your, maybe it's on your blog, I think there's a picture of a glass of water that is
Okay, yeah,
in turmoil, and splashing everywhere. Can you just talk about that a little bit? I liked that analogy that you used.
yeah. Okay, so I don't think it's mine. I might have adapted it in bits, but I'm sure
Okay.
I'm sure it's somebody else's. But with my own flavor of it. But basically, I see a glass of water, and the glass representing your ability to handle stressful situations.
Yeah.
So that's the capacity to handle stressful situations. And this is where I think your daily stuff that comes in, emails, your technology problems, your before you started recording, you were telling me that your furnace had broken, those sorts of things, or stressful situations that we can handle.
Yeah.
And for me, an example, it helped me understand it. It's like, if I've got a glass 3/4 full of repressed stress and emotion, then things like a change at work or a new leadership team can tip me over into pain.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, as well as the somatic tracking type activity, removing the fear and of movement is good. But I also believe, and it appears that not everyone needs to do this, but I needed to let some of that old stuff out there that was stagnant. So that's where I think the journaling comes up for me. It brings this subconscious thought and emotion that has caused physical reactions, and brings it into light, so that then your consciousness can see it. It's no longer subconscious. You can shine a light on what's been going around in there, and empty some of that. I think I said it's like putting a hole in the bottom of the water so it can, in the glass, so it can drain out. So the next time when your furnace breaks and your technology goes wrong, you don't get triggered into pain. So that's how I tried to explain it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what he's referring to is, I woke up this morning, my furnace is not working. So my house is freezing cold. I have a little heater next to me, and yeah, it's kind of a mess, but yeah, so a big part of this journey is learning how to experience change. I'm gonna just call it change in life, like the furnace not working, and change in technology or whatever, in a way that's I don't know, just more safe, and it's not as big of a deal. How did you personally work through, let's just talk about change. How is that not a trigger for you anymore? What kind of deep work did you do with that?
Yeah. So I understood, well, so the deeper work that I did was journaling exercises.
Okay.
And I started with just a timeline. So from birth to the present moment, on the top, all the major life events, and then at the bottom, any physical ailments that came along, and then started to notice correlations. And then, so it didn't take me too far to have to look. When I was 16, my best friend was killed. He was murdered, actually. And so that was water in the glass that had stayed in there for quite some time. Also, another thing for me was I was brought up in, I don't want to lose half your audience, but I was brought up in a very religious household, and some of the I don't know, it didn't just resonate with me. And there was what came through journaling was that there was this, I didn't sit right, that there was this belief that unless I 100% believed what I was told to believe, I was going to go to hell. And I felt it just didn't resonate with me, and I felt quite unaccepted by family for having beliefs that weren't necessarily aligned to theirs. So I think there was two things there that when I delved deeper, just had created patterns. So for example, like when my friend died, I got this real, like, I am not going to waste any of my life. I'm going to live it to the best of my ability. I'm going to fill it with things, and which sounds positive, but actually I found myself in a position where I was always in the future, never enjoying the moment, always looking for the next thing, the next achievement, the next. And then there was the reason why I was struggling with change was a fear of this judgment that I believed I got from the way I had interpreted having religious parents, whether that was their intention or not. It's the way it landed with me as a child.
Okay.
And not not believing what they believed, and this constant judgment and that I felt. And that was so whenever things were changing, I felt I've got to prove myself that I'm good enough to these people, and so that kept arising as well. And all that came from journaling exercises. So I would do a number of different ones. So I picked the life events, and I would just free write as fast as possible, 2 or 3 pages, and just see what came out. And yeah, it's quite. I just find it such a useful tool to explore some of that deeper stuff, because often I would forget. Some things would be obvious, or I'd set off in a certain direction, and there'd be a complete random paragraph that comes out from somewhere that that once it's there on the paper, you can then see it and analyze it, and it's no longer subconscious. So it's like a releasing thing, and then I would rip it up and throw it away. And that's how I started to. So very long-winded answer to your what deep work would I do? That was it. And how that affected change specifically is I just noticed the patterns. I could see why I was now programmed in that way. I felt like I was constantly needing to look for approval from people. And once I could see that, then I could drop it. So yeah, that was the work that I did. And currently in a position actually where a massive change to voluntary redundancy, looking for new work in the tech industry, and that would have been a massive thing, and I've absolutely no pain at all. So,
that's fantastic.
I'm actually quite enjoying the process as well. So so it is a big shift, a complete shift, in fact. Yeah.
Okay, so in your journaling, you essentially discovered all these really deep beliefs and pressures that were, like you were saying, either put on you, both, and also interpreted that way. So it sounds like you were able to let go a lot of those pressures. Do you feel like through that then that you changed in some of your personality traits, like the need to please, people pleasing, and just to connect with you in certain ways? I also was raised in a Christian home and had to reevaluate some of who I had believed God to be, and also understand that humans are humans. So I resonate with that pressure, and that need for approval can go hand in hand with that, with religiosity, I'll just say. But I feel like in the mind-body community, there is a difference in opinion on whether we just have to acknowledge something exists, like acknowledge I'm a people pleaser, or I'm self-critical, or whatever. And then there's the other view that once you discover it, you also have to change, to work to reduce or adjust that thing. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like are you the same person as before you were in pain as now? How much have you changed through this work?
So no, I'm not the same person at all. Well, I say at all. Clearly, there are elements that are the same, but I have changed quite a lot. I think your point about once you've spotted something, do you need to change it? Mm-hmm. My view is that I think once you spot a pattern, and you shine a light on it, it will just naturally change. I think. I think because I noticed the same patterns coming back. I'm doing this with my fingers, but I felt at a time that I was going around in circles. I kept finding the same pattern, but actually, when I look at it now with hindsight, I can see that the sort of the loops would get smaller. So actually, some people say people pleasing, for example, the pattern came up and again and again and again, but actually the time for me to recognize it, shine a light in it, and let it go got quicker and quicker and quicker.
Okay.
So that's why I think the only thing to do really, and you can, is to just observe it, and then it'll naturally dissipate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That observer mentality is really interesting of being able to look at myself and be like, oh, I'm feeling the need to people please today, or man, I am feeling the need to be efficient. That's one of mine. Developed personality trait was the sense of urgency. Like, so being able to say, oh, I'm just in that pattern. I don't have to do that. I actually have time. I'm okay.
I think, and I watched Matty as well. I think last week, I can't remember if he said it there to me, actually on your interview or when I interviewed him, and I spotted something similar with me. So once you understand this stuff, and you understand that your thoughts and your emotions are causing physical reactions, it's great. I mean, you're making leaps and bounds. And then you can get caught in over analysis sometimes, and that creates its own stress and its own pressure as you start over analyzing your character, and asking why things are causing pain, which is why I come back to that. I think ultimately just observing it and not getting drawn into that over analysis is the key, and then those patterns will slowly slip away, I think.
Okay. You talked about, in one of your articles, you talked about visualizing, and visualizing was really powerful for me too. Can you just talk about what role it had and how you used it?
Yes. So I used it predominantly when I was reintroducing the sporting activities, and specifically with regard to the running scenario that I explained. So I would use it often before going to sleep, actually. So before going to sleep, I would just spend 5-10 minutes really visualizing running. So finishing races, how it would feel to be running, just trying to make it as vivid as possible. And then I can't remember, I'll have read it somewhere, and then going to sleep with that image, or just it felt really important to do it just before. It's like you're programming the subconscious with an image of something that you were going to do one day before you slept. So that's how I used it. It's difficult to say how much of an impact that had, but the visualizations did happen. So maybe, those events that I visualized did occur. So quite a big impact, maybe.
Yeah, I like that idea of doing it before bed. That makes sense to me. I used visualization with the personality traits. So as I started to recognize what they were, I started visualizing myself letting go some of those personality traits. In the same way that you're talking about going for a run with no pain, I was like imagining being in. I actually visualized quite a bit in my healing journey. I visualized flare-ups. I visualized and imagined, I guess, like messing up in life, being human, having pain come back and being okay with it, just kind of not overreacting to those things, which I think actually helped because I'm assuming for you, as for me, it was not a linear journey. I wanted it to be, but it was not. And so the more we can reduce fear around those flare-ups, the better. What was your journey like, as far as like, were you encouraged the whole time? Were there times you were like, this is taking way longer than I thought it was going to? Was it long? Was it short? What was that like for you?
So first of all, I really like that idea that you just mentioned about using visualization in a different way. I'd not considered that. I'd done a bit of like backwards, actually. I'd imagine, so say I've been in a situation where I don't know, some sort of egoic reaction had been triggered. I've sort of visualized going back and reacting differently.
Did you say an ego reaction?
Yeah, some sort of like egoic, some sort of emotion that comes up, starting to look at something internally rather than externally. But so if someone had made me angry and I responded in a certain way, for example, without instinctively, and then I'd gone back and visualized reacting in a different way. So I've used it like that, but I've not used it
Yeah.
like you said about predicting future situations, like what if the pain does come back and there is a flare up, and I like that idea. I'll pinch that.
Great. It's yours.
So yeah, it took a couple of years, I think. Like I said, I'm not great on the whole
Yeah.
timeline, but I think it was probably around a couple of years. And like you, yeah, it wasn't linear. It was a model. Um, but like I said, that's when I think within that 2 year period, I saw the patterns coming round,
Yeah.
and then they got quicker. So it might have took, so say I was getting a flare up of pain, it might have taken a couple of weeks to get rid of it, and then it was a week, and then it was a few days, and then it
Right.
was minutes, and then I could stop it before it was coming. That sort of a thing. So yeah, it was a couple of years. It wasn't a straight line. And I think we're also, well, I certainly did, got obsessed with being pain free as well. And I think which brings with it its own stresses and its
Yeah.
own emotional reactions. I think it's just being human. Our bodies, like I said at the beginning, the voice gone.
Move towards the mic again.
But has my audio gone?
Yeah. So go back one sentence again.
I can't remember what I was saying. No, I can't remember what I was saying.
I know. I got distracted by the fact that the audio went out. And I
No worries.
forgot to put a pin in what we were talking about.
Hasn't been that important.
I think it was important actually. You were talking about the human condition of we have pain, and this obsession with never having any pain is so much pressure. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I put that quite a lot on myself. This must be pain free, but it is just that, like I say, yeah, it's just the human condition. Like I said at the beginning, you think you said something stupid, you feel the emotion of embarrassment, and your cheeks react. It's just what we do. So if the pain does come back, then it's just because there is some thoughts and emotions, and my body is reacting, and that's okay. That's why. Once you've understood the tools and techniques to get rid of it, that's fine. So I think, although I haven't had pain for a long time, it doesn't mean to say it won't come back.
Yeah.
But I've got the tools necessary to get rid of it again.
Right.
It's having the confidence that you can.
Yeah, I interviewed somebody a couple days ago, and it hasn't aired yet. And I asked her about how I don't know what I asked her, like how she talks about pain or something, and chronic pain. And she said, it's the journey of being human. It's not that we're never going to experience symptoms again. And the sooner we understand that, the sooner it is not scary when a symptom shows up, and we don't have to make it chronic, right? Like, it's just like, oh yeah, I have a stressor, I'm human. Physiology is changing a little bit while I work through this, and it's triggering a repressed something. And there's just not this big deal made out of it when you understand, like you're talking about, thoughts and emotions lead to physiological changes. And for
me, it's that I'm not recognizing an emotion, so I jump back to journaling. So if I think thoughts and emotions and physical reactions. So, but if I'm not recognizing an emotion because I'm either blocking it out, plowing through it, then the physical reaction comes. If there is any physical reaction, it's a sign for me that there is something that is going on that I'm not addressing. That's where the journaling will come out, and I'll try and experience the emotion through journaling. That's just that. I think that's for me. I think it's a growing awareness. So I don't think it stops when the pain ends. There is like a growing awareness that you're seeing thoughts and emotions come up in real time, and therefore they don't take hold because you can experience them and then they move on.
Yeah, and I like you found journaling to be absolutely irreplaceable with that. When you are blocking, when you're unaware, trying to think yourself into figuring out what you're thinking just doesn't, for me, it's not helpful. I just get stuck. Whereas if I can write it out, it's just this really.
You have a resistance to it.
What? Say that again?
Did you have a resistance to journaling?
Well, I don't know that I had a resistance to journaling. I know that in years prior to healing, journaling was where I went to become more depressed. So I would journal in a way that just wired my emotion. And then I learned when I learned about the mind-body connection, I was like, oh, this is where I get to release things, not, not, I don't know, learn them more.
Yes, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, no, I had a resistance to it, but I think it was just because I knew that I had to lift the lid on painful events and painful, and that takes time, I think.
And I don't know about you, but it's also, I mean, it's hurtful sometimes to go back to those memories because or those emotions, because sometimes I had to acknowledge there were people that they weren't great to me. And I didn't want to acknowledge that. It hurt to do that. And so I think there was some resistance to that. But then when I started doing the work, I realized that it didn't mean that I had to hate people. It didn't mean that I had to let go of certain people. Certain people I did, absolutely. Boundaries are a big part of this. And journaling really brings that out. So I can see why for some people it can be difficult, but it's also just this huge tool that's accessible. I mean, all you need is a pen and a piece of paper. It's pretty much free, and you don't have to call the counselor, and it's available all the time. So
Yeah, that's what I liked about it. Yeah, the timing thing. You can use it when it's needed. Yeah.
yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, so as we close up, any I don't know, nuggets of wisdom to give somebody, let's say, that's in the middle of the journey and it's not going as fast as they want it to go, which is all of our journeys.
um, I don't know. I think having some patience with it. Yeah, I think
Mhm.
putting pressure on yourself for it to go quicker is just adding more stress.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah, if anything, relax into it and maybe drop some of that expectation that it's going to be quick, and
Mhm.
recognize it as an ongoing, lifelong thing, really.
Mhm. Yeah.
And there's no rush.
Right. Right. No rush. Lean into it. Have that patience. Patience is incredibly kind, and when people are patient with us, it just feels so loving. And when we are patient with ourselves, like you're saying, that's a huge gift. So, okay. Are you going to keep writing?
Yeah, I intend to. So I've started writing up Matty's was like the first attempt at writing somebody else's story.
Uh-huh.
So I'm trying to find people really that aren't inclined to write and share, but I've got really good stories. And
Yeah.
so just again, like it's like an extension of the journaling therapy for me. Just writing up other people's, I find really rewarding.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so if I come across people with interesting stories, I think because it doesn't really matter what the symptoms are, but for some reason when you're in the mix of it, you want people with the symptoms that you had.
Yeah.
So I find a range of different symptoms and stories that will allow people to attach onto it.
Yeah.
Because once you've come out the other side, you realize it doesn't matter what the symptoms are, but when you're in it, it needs to be just like you.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
The more stories that are out there, the better.
Speaking of which, so for you, it was degenerative disc disease, so DDD, sciatica. Was that what?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sciatica, yeah.
And bulging discs, but
Bulging disc causing the sciatica,
yeah.
apparently.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So those of you out there that want to hear your symptom, your diagnosis, there it is, but it's all mind body syndrome. Yeah. So, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Thank you for being inspiring. All the things. Appreciate you.
Putting it out there. It's great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. I am saying goodbye to all the listeners. I'll see you guys next week, and Yeah, have a good one.